candle chart with this candle, last one. If it will start going down, I'm going to place an order to buy. Let's see. If it will move higher, they are not my chances to place an order. So hope you had a good evening yesterday. We did well on Bitcoin, on especially Swiss franc. Yeah. Yes, I'm going to place an order to buy at 108,789. Okay. I'm going to place an order to buy at 108,789. Okay, order placed. And let's see if you're up to Japanese yen. You're welcome to place an order if you want to follow this trade. So 2 orders right now available for you. One of them I probably have to cancel it because, as you can see, euro moved down quite substantially. Let's see what's going to happen with this candle. If it will move down, I will have to cancel it because it's day trading, guys. It's not like we are planning to hold it for several days or weeks. We're planning to get profit as quickly as possible. Okay, I'll speak to you in a couple of minutes. I'll speak to you later. It's look like the euro changed its direction. So if it will move higher, I will hold. If it will start moving lower, I will cancel this order. Same applies to Japanese yen. Stay safe.
The issues in France around this vaccine would spill over culturally to the issues in Africa as well. When you say we could see a disaster, can you describe what that disaster would look like?
Well, the disaster is, it looks like the South African variant, the B1351, is accelerating now up into Malawi, Mozambique. And even though Africa overall has done better than many expected during 2020, that grace period could end as this virus starts to accelerate. And the world has been very focused on very high-tech innovations, mRNA vaccines that'll never filter, or I don't think will filter to the low and middle income countries. Yes, Pfizer-BioNTech sent 235,000 doses to Rwanda. That was great, but look at the need. There are 1.1 billion people living in sub-Saharan Africa. If we need 2 doses of most of those vaccines, that's 2 billion doses. So far it's a drop in the bucket, and there's no real plan for what we do. We're trying to accelerate a low-cost recombinant protein vaccine with another Indian producer, Biological E, and that's going really well. So hopefully we can fill that gap. But that's a potentially humanitarian crisis right there for Africa.
Are you receiving sufficient funding to do that, Doctor?
No, I mean, we had to raise a lot of that money privately from various sources, and here in Texas, enough to do the technology transfer to India. And now we're in discussions with South Africa and Indonesia, so hopefully that will come through. But you know, everybody went very heavy on the innovation, and innovation's important. We need to innovate in vaccines, but you know, at a certain stage, you need some traditional, low-cost, durable vaccines for low and middle-income countries, and there was not enough attention paid to that.
Now, Peter Hotez, thank you so much. I notice your bookshelf behind you. No doubt Walter Isaacson's new book on genetics will take a place there as well. Peter Hotez of Texas Christian Baylor College of Medicine.
Thank you, Doctor.
With us today. John, you know, I look at the pandemic, I look at all that we're talking about, and there is an effervescence out there. We heard that from Tom Colicchio, the restaurateur, 1 week ago today.
Oh, things are buzzing, and for anyone here in New York City, they'll know it's very, very difficult to get a reservation in a New York City restaurant at the moment, Tom. Things are already opening up, and things are already booming back before we even get everyone vaccinated. I just want to re-clarify something I said earlier about the numbers in the UK. 28 million doses given so far, enough to cover 20.7% of the population, and not entirely, of course, from the AstraZeneca vaccine. And just to compare and contrast that with America right now, 116 million doses given, enough for 17.7% of the population. Tom, to the doctor's point, though, we need to think a lot more about the developing world a lot more about Africa that don't have access to these vaccines, and a lot more about the prospect of variations.
And David Malpass at the World Bank would agree with what you say, John, and frankly, Managing Director Georgiev at IMF has really emphasized this as well. John, what I would focus on, I said this last night at the dinner table, Brazil and Latin America are horrific.
Yeah, the numbers, not good. We're talking about a third wave in Europe, shutdowns in Paris again for 4 weeks. It's a very, very different conversation around to the rest of the world compared to, say, select parts of the Middle East, the United States, and the UK and China for that matter as well.
You're going to get a 59 on oil here, John.
169 on 10-year, 60 on crude, Tom. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
Okay, I was right. I need to cancel order to sell short euro. It didn't go higher. So for this moment, please cancel your order. So we're going to cancel order to sell short, but Japanese yen, order to buy Japanese yen still on. So at this moment, please do cancel the order to sell euro. Stay safe, guys. I'll speak to you later.
Not only just COVID, but it's COVID related, but it's also stress related to job. I think COVID probably just sort of was the nail in the coffin for a lot of us. Having the destruction room here is also a very healthy outlet. I do not encourage it as something that we do on a regular basis, but I do find that when people come in, being able to break plates, being able to write out whatever's on their mind and letting it go, being able to just take out their frustration and their anger.
Come to a place like this and be able to break some stuff and release some tension without going to jail.
Access the financial world on demand. Hear from leading economists, policymakers, and industry experts via live and on-demand webinars. Only from Bloomberg. Start exploring to see what's moving the markets. Visit Bloomberg.com/webinars.
Valuations, particularly, sort of the technology landscape, have gotten to some pretty extraordinary levels. So I think it's not a surprise. I don't think it's any indication of the beginning of the end, but I do think markets don't like uncertainty.
This is a market that over the past few weeks has made it clear it wants to go higher. It got a little spooked by the idea that geopolitical tensions are rising.
Our generation's biggest problem.
Climate change is happening.
And the world's most innovative solutions.
Transport, industry, buildings, electricity, all of those things.
Everything you need to know about our changing environment, the politics of global warming.
We can and we will deal with climate change.
In the fight against climate change, Bloomberg Green has you covered.
The savings rate, I expect, to stabilize at a much higher rate than it was before the pandemic.
We think there's a psychological release that's available here.
While traffic may continue to be weak, sales are improving.
The bearish argument around runaway inflation is not going to come to fruition, and they're kind of fattening themselves up for the slaughter.
Where there is danger is in some of these markets that have been swept up into a speculative frenzy.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz.
Good morning, everyone. Jonathan Farrow, Lisa Abramowitz, and Tom Keene, a simulcast, Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg TV. Abramowitz, the pendulum of day off. She is so gone today. Well needed. We wish her.
I think it's important. We came into 21 talking about synchronized global growth. Who's talking about that now? Big growth figures, sure. But beneath the surface, beneath those headline forecasts, America great, China stable, Europe not so much.
John, I want to touch on two important ideas, and one is your property this afternoon, the real yield. That's what our guests are talking about, which is the real yield from a negative 1.0% up to negative 0.60. That's come fast, and you wonder, can it continue that linear move?
Mike Schumacher of Wells Fargo talking about that move to 0 on reals and 2% on nominal. So what do you get? You get a much wider spread versus the rest of the world. Japan pinning it to the floor at 0 with a 25 basis point band on either side. In Germany, the depot rate staying negative for years to come, maybe. So the Bund on a 10-year maturity could be -2. And we could be talking about really wide spreads. The Treasury market being the high yielder in a world of low yield still, because these central banks are just not going to let this go.
John, before we get to data, I really want to talk about what we've learned today about the uproar in Anchorage, Alaska. You go back to the Shanghai communique of 1972. There was no communique yesterday.
Let's be clear about this. We've talked a lot about diplomacy, and we have experts, former diplomats, current diplomats that come on this program, and they will tell you that diplomacy is well choreographed, well orchestrated, that the individuals get in the room way before the high-profile guys do, and they basically orchestrate the outcome. What happened yesterday, what we were meant to see, this is what we were meant to see. The US delegation, Secretary Blinken, talked for a couple of minutes. The Chinese delegation talked for a couple of minutes. What we actually saw was the Chinese delegation go on for a whole lot longer. And then what happened? Secretary Blinken, instead of letting the press leave the room, told them to stay so that he could snap back. And this became what seemed to be quite impulsive, though I have to say Secretary Blinken seemed very calm and collected. And what it comes down to continuously between these two countries, China seems to be very comfortable having a conversation about global economic issues. When you talk about human rights, they push back aggressively about the social injustice taking place within the United States. And we got a little sample of that, some appetizer for maybe what's still to come in yesterday's talks in Alaska.
Yeah, well, in talks in Alaska and another airline, we're going to have Helene Becker with us here in a bit. Alaska Airlines opening up nonstop flights of some flavor as well. John, let's do the data right now. Green on the screen. I'm sorry, the NASDAQ down 8% is not a correction.
Got a bounce back this morning, up 66. We're up 0.5% on the NASDAQ. On the S&P, Tom, up 8. The S&P 500 up 0.2%. In the bond market, I think we can say we've had a big move year to date on 10-year treasuries. On the week, up about 6 basis points. On the day, down about 2 or 3. Tom, back to 168.21 on 10s.
John, do we need to talk about Bitcoin? You and I ignore it as best as we can. 59,000? What does Bitcoin do over the weekend?
I'm still trying to understand Bitcoin, so I try not to talk too much about it. Not because I advocate one way or another, just I'm trying to understand the universe in a way that I can actually add some value to the conversation.
Yeah, Brian Levitt, ordered by his general counsel not to talk about Bitcoin, and joins us right now with Invesco Global Market Strategist as well. We'll avoid it. Brian, there was a theory 2 or 3 levels ago about international investment and a recovering Pacific Rim. Dovetail in EM disappointments of the last couple days and weeks with what we observed, the tension in Anchorage yesterday. How is the Pacific Rim doing?
Yeah, so China actually has emerged from this, as most people know, in quite good shape. You're right, the economy is quite stable there.
Okay, guys, it's time to play stop on profit for Japanese yen, and it will be 108.01. Okay, stop on profit 801. Stop on profit placed. So you have to do the same, and whatever happened, like I always say, you will not end up in profit, in loss, sorry. You don't have to put stop loss because we're already in profit, and we never put. Our strategy allows us, it was designed not to lose any money, so it allows us to put stop on profit and not stop loss. Okay, let me point out that this is actually stop. People will understand what it is. I will highlight in the yellow color for newcomers, and let's see. 108, sorry, it goes to 801. 8 like this. Okay, I'll speak to you later. Stay safe.
Ultimately fade as we move out beyond 2021.
Well, let's move out beyond 21. This cycle moves quickly, Brian. We've been pricing in all of 21 throughout the last couple of months. In fact, since the beginning of November, we've been pricing the boom that is 21. When do you start thinking about deceleration in 22?
Well, I think that investors need to keep their mind on deceleration in 22. Now, I think this recovery reflation trade plays out for a bit. You know, your value-oriented parts of the market get their day in the sun. But ultimately, you know, this idea that we can't own anything long duration, that interest rates are going to keep going up forever, I caution against that. What you see as you move out into 2022 is, look, we all have pent-up demand. How long does that persist? We know that this income replacement that you get in the fiscal deal starts to fade as you move out into 2022. And let's not forget the long-term structural forces against inflation, like an aging population globally, automation of the workforce, new technology. So I'm not ready to sell anything long duration. I think growth stocks will be back in vogue as we move out into 2022.
Brian, I'd really underline the new technology, which is, of course, a great mystery. Paul Romer with Bloomberg earlier this week, the laureate. Brian Levitt, how much cash is really out there? I get all these trillion numbers, but when Invesco sits down and calculates out the investable cash that's out there waiting to find a warm spot, how much is it? Is it a lot? I mean, I'm not looking for a number answer. I'm looking for something Friday scientific. Is it ginormous or is it a lot?
It's a lot. I mean, it's ginormous. I mean, you had $1 trillion go into money market strategies last year. You've got, you know, I mean, even if you think about the amount of money that's just sitting in government-related bonds, you're looking at a few trillion, and you add it all up, there's a substantial amount of money sitting on the sidelines. Even if you think since 08, you've had far more money, a ginormous amount of money go into fixed income strategies versus equity strategies. And yields have come up a bit, but nonetheless, the Fed's still telling you they want to inflate away a good percentage of it. You're getting zero in money markets. The Fed wants greater than 2% inflation. That's not a great deal. Ultimately, I think that money continues to find its way into equities and credit. And let's remember, a lot of this support on the fiscal side is going to end up in markets. It's some of it is finding its way into middle income household pockets, and that's going to find its way into markets too. So I would say asset price inflation is a good part of this story.
Brian, let's stop talking about managing other people's money and talk about managing your money. I understand it's young Carly's birthday today in the Levitt household, so happy 13th to the young Levitt. For you, Carly needs some money when she comes to New York City in about 10 years' time. If you had to buy and hold for a decade for your young 13-year-old. Where would that money go today, Brian?
Well, let me first say I hope it's a decade before she's going to New York City to hang out with her friends. I assume it's going to be a little bit sooner than that. But I think that you have a trade here on value stocks. But if you're looking out long term, 10 years, you want to look for structural growth businesses globally. I would think that a lot of those are going to be in the United States. Some of those are going to be in the emerging markets as well.
Brian, is she trading GameStop off the couch?
Not yet. Maybe I should teach her to. Not yet. I just feel bad that, last year the friends were honking the horn on the street to celebrate the birthday. This year a little bit better. We're celebrating in the garage. Maybe by 2022 we can go inside.
Yeah. Have fun, Brian. Happy birthday.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate
Enjoy the celebrations. Thank you, sir. Brian Levitt there of Invesco, the global market strategist. That irony, it's not lost on anyone, is it, Tom, this moment that we're talking about? Last year it was the economy bad, markets great. This year, economy great, and people having a conversation about whether markets will have to turn lower.
Yeah, I mean, there's a financial end of it. I'm going to go back to buried in the headlines today, John. Dr. Fauci going after Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Are we still going to believe in science? Science got us to where we are right now, John, in what, 6, 8,
so, yes,
10
Tom,
months?
Yes, and the vaccine push has been terrific, but I do think there was some damage done this time last year on the mask front. I do think there was some damage done, and we can't gloss over that. We were all told about not wearing a mask, and then a month later told we all needed a face covering. Then we were told face coverings weren't good enough, and now we're told 2 masks. And I understand the science changes, but I think a lot of people got the feeling that they were lied to 12 months ago, Tom, and that needs to be repaired.
No, the confidence needs to be won back. Helene Becker will help us with that, John, right?
Looking forward to that. On the airlines, on FedEx, Helene Becker, Coward, senior research analyst. Timely conversation coming up. Futures up 8 on the S&P 500. We advance 0.2%. This is Bloomberg.
With the First Word News, I'm Rishika Gupta. The first top-level talks between the Biden administration and China were bound to be confrontational. Now the question is, can the two sides find a way to cooperate? In Anchorage, Alaska, diplomats from the world's largest economies criticized each other over everything from human rights to trade. Secretary of State Antony Blinken accused China of undermining global stability. The European Union has a chance to put coronavirus vaccinations back on track today. Regulators have given AstraZeneca's vaccine the all-clear. EU governments, including Germany, France and Italy, say they'll immediately resume administering the shot. Several countries suspended its use after reports of blood clots in some patients. The Biden administration is considering whether to impose more sanctions to block construction of that gas pipeline from Russia to Germany. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline is almost complete. Bloomberg's learned the U.S. may sanction the project's parent company. Penalties on other companies are also a possibility. And American mortgage lenders are likely to now focus their resources on those homeowners who still have incentive to refinance. The average homeowner left within the Fannie Mae 30-year MBS index is paying an interest rate of 3.8%. Mortgage rates have risen steadily since January and are now just under 3.1%. The National Football League has announced a new series of long-term TV deals valued at $105 billion. The package includes a historic contract giving Amazon exclusive rights to Thursday football broadcasts. That's a first for a streaming company. CBS and Fox will keep the rights to daytime games on Sunday. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Rishika Gupta. This is Bloomberg.
80% of the world's trade travels by sea. At any given time, around 5,000 ships are on the ocean carrying containers. Without them, the global economy would collapse.
Many of those containers pass through here, Singapore, the world's second largest port. The industry accounts for 7% of the country's GDP.
But the industry is under pressure. The uneven recovery from the pandemic is creating a shortage of containers where they're needed most and driving bottlenecks at major ports. It sent freight prices soaring.
Since the beginning of COVID-19, these are levels of shipments that we've never seen before.
Chinese New Year marks a seasonal turn for freighters when rates are renegotiated for the next year. Companies must choose whether to swallow the financial hit or pass on the cost. It's a decision that could bring new headwinds for the global economic recovery.
BSO Now is your online home for brand new Boston Symphony Orchestra and Boston Pops performances. Discover new releases each week that include behind-the-scenes storytelling with conductors including music director Andres Nelsons, guest composers and musicians, plus critically acclaimed archival concerts and more. Visit bso.org/now, where the music plays on. BSO season sponsored by Bank of America.
Trading revenues coming in better than expected. Everything. Cash, $1.4 trillion of cash. One of the most notable aspects of this report that was stellar.
In the United States, it is an absolute core national security agreement across the political spectrum that China is the most critical adversary of the United States. The Europeans don't buy that at all. China is not their core adversary. And that's a real problem.
For some people, that's the problem. That was Ian Bremmer of the Eurasia Group and G0 Media President. Okay, there's going to be a multilateral approach, but can you get your allies to come along with you? From New York City this morning, good morning. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro. Lisa Abramowitz back with us on Monday, taking a well-earned break, a long weekend. Here's the price action going into this weekend. We look like this on the equity market. Up 0.6% on the NASDAQ 100, on the S&P up a third. Yields in 2-3 basis points on 10s to 168. We have a 59 handle on crude. We do not advance. We did earlier this morning after a 7% plunge on WTI. What a range we've had this week on both crude and treasuries as well.
Oil.
Stability, Tom, on euro dollar, 119.01.
Oil's a shock. I've got to read it on that. Of course, Javier Blas helping us. Javier Blas helping us out with that. John, review, what was the why yesterday on oil? I sort of missed that, to be honest.
Can't put my finger on it. Took on a life of its own, to be honest with you. And a lot of people were talking about maybe we're priced in a recovery too quickly, given what's happening in Europe, shutting down again. Don't know, Tom.
The heritage that John and I have is to talk to experts, and if you know the name Cowen, you know they own aviation. With the legendary Kai von Rumer and the ever so younger Helene Becker, they have been at the top of the heap on airline analysis, and we're thrilled Helene Becker could join us this morning. Helene, within your note is the rollout you are guessing at, which is Cancun at some point, and then we're going to jot off to Paris as they go into lockdown this weekend, and somewhere way out in 2022, we're going to be able to go to Asia. Can the airlines wait that long? Are the airlines in control of their destiny?
I think they are, and it's good to see you again, Tom and John. Nice to talk to you guys. I think they are in control of their own destiny at this point. Over the past week, we've regularly seen more than 1 million people a day pass through TSA, and we thought that would be the case till about mid-May, and then around Memorial Day weekend, we We think there will be a jailbreak, and we'll see regularly between 1.1 and 1.5 million people a day. And frankly, we think that's pretty close to pre-pandemic levels in domestic traffic. Right. People don't want to quarantine, especially, you know.
Okay, guys, I need to place stop on profit further for Japanese yen. I move just 1 pip higher, 108.1.9. Oh, actually, I'm going to keep just right here, 2 pips higher, right? Yeah, I'm going to keep 108.809. This is nice support level, and let's see what's going to happen with this pair. It's looked like it moved nicely higher, so probably quite soon I will have to increase my stop on profit. If you already into this trade, please increase your profit. So if the price will change direction, if momentum changed, you will end up with nice profit. Okay? Stay safe. Speak to you later, guys.
See them bringing back wide-body aircraft this summer in huge measure, because Europe is still, for most of Europe is still closed. But when Boris Johnson announced his plan for reopening the UK in mid-May, EasyJet saw 334% increase in bookings that night. Real. I know, and because people are sick of being home and cooped up, and they want to get out and about. And we're more worried about Europe than we are about U.S. airlines because of that, because Europe has been so locked down. And I think also people don't want to wear a mask for 8 or 10-hour flights.
People are done with this, Helene. As you know, they're totally done with this. And what's amazing, before we move on and just speed on to the boom in the United States, we've got to look back on where we were. I remember talking to you in the depths of this crisis. It felt depressing. It was depressing. The likes of Warren Buffett, a legendary investor, dumped his airline stocks in April last year, and Berkshire Hathaway said, the world has changed. And Helene, so many people got this wrong because so much is coming back so quickly. Why is it so difficult to get a read on this industry?
It always has been for almost 4 decades that I've covered this industry. It's been very up and down. 2 or 3 good years, maybe 1 great year, and then 4 or 5 so-so or bad years. It's so cyclical and so dependent on consumer discretionary spending. And then, of course, business traffic, which you're kind of alluding to here. In the million people a day we're really not seeing much business traffic, maybe small and medium-sized companies who need to get out on the road to generate revenue. But we're really not seeing corporate business traffic come back yet. They're still worried about getting their people back to work. But we think that's a fourth quarter 21 event where people will start to get back on the road. We think maybe 80% of the way back by year-end 22. And then maybe the other 20% comes back over 23 to 26 or 7.
So let's talk about opportunities then, because right now everyone's on board with the domestic story here in America. Everyone's on board with the return of travel. Everyone's on board with the likes of Alaska, nicely leveraged to that story. Helene, when do we start to talk about the New York-London corridor reopening, the European story reopening? Is there an opportunity there now, or have we already missed that too?
Oh, no, I don't think we've missed it at all. I think United is the most leveraged to international traffic. 50% of their capacity is in international, bigger than both American and Delta. So I think that international corridor starts to come back probably September, October. I'm kind of hoping this summer, because all of us canceled many trips to Europe last year. And I think we want to go back. And I think that by the end of the summer, enough vaccine will be in people's arms worldwide that we'll be able to see that start to reopen, but just start.
Helene, you know I love catching up with you. It's great to get you on the program. Helene Becker there,
Thanks for having me.
Senior Research Analyst. Thank you for being with us. Tom, my line in the sand, the vacation is booked, the end of August for the family in Italy, and I have no idea whether that vacation takes place or not. The flight is booked with American. Let's see if it actually happens.
I laud you, John, for having the foresight to do that, and frankly, almost the intellectual courage to do it, because the news of the last couple of days has really been difficult. John, a research note just in, which is really the first of the wonderful Friday information we will see. Alan Ruskin, who has joined us this week at Deutsche Bank, John, writes a classic Ruskin detailed note, and he says the real canary in our demand coal mine is going to be the U.S. current account deficit, and it's going to blow out to something unimaginable just because of all that demand.
What does that mean for this currency? We'll talk about that in just a moment. Coming up, Michael Gapin, Barclays Head of U.S. Economics Research, and dropping by to catch up with us on EM, Damian Sassower of Bloomberg Intelligence.
Damien, he's here for the bracket, John.
Dropping by for a little bit of basketball, then the rate hikes from Brazil, Turkey, and maybe want to come from Russia too. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
How can somebody remember things that happened 80 years ago? How do you do that?
David, it's easier to remember 80 years ago than what I had for lunch today.
Mercedes-Benz is on a path towards CO2 neutral mobility. So we have flicked the switch there, and really we're going to step by step electrify everything. And what does that mean? Combustion engines get electrified.
For
From New York City for our audience worldwide, counting you down to the opening bell on TV and radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Here's the price action. I'll whip through things for you. Equities up 0.2 on the S&P, up 0.4 on the Russell, up 0.6 on the Nasdaq. We bounced back after a 3 percentage point loss in yesterday's session. We have some stability in the bond market for now. 2s, 10s, 30s. Switch up the board. We look like this on 10s. Had a little look at 175 yesterday, pulled back, and again this morning we're down by 2 basis points to 168.56 on 30s. We come in 3 basis points to 242. Stability for now. Not so much stability over in EM. Let's finish on this. Emerging market currencies. This has got to be the story of the moment in global central banking. Away from the Fed. It's EM. Brazil, a hike. Turkey, a hike. 200 basis points. This morning, Russia talking about
okay,
a hike.
guys.
So what do we...
Okay, this is how it works. We just closed our position on Japanese yen at 108, 809. It just probably somebody, some institution really wanted to have our money, but we still end up in the profit. As you can see, it started to move higher. In our case, we have £200 in profit. In your case, it's all about how much broker pays you per pip. Okay, well done. I'll speak to you later. Good trade, by the way. Good trade. Good spotted, good trade. I'll speak to you later, guys.
The lira is down 60% over the last 5 years.
Damien, I'm doing intraday moves. Give me a break.
I mean,
I'll get the month chart up for you. Come on.
35% over the last 5 years. We need more than this. But, you know, I think it is a bit comforting to watch these currencies rally on the rate hikes for sure.
What more do they need to do, Damien?
Oh, God. Well, in Turkey's case, I mean, they have to get their locals to start trusting the currency again, right? I mean, the fact that they're holding a ton of dollar deposits, a ton of gold, and they're just, you know, they just remain offshore. They're not bringing their currency back onshore is a real risk there. In Brazil, it's a 95% debt to GDP ratio, right? They've got to bring that down. And, you know, myself included, you know, I was hoping after, you know, fiscal spending to GDP basically rising to 12% last year, coming back down to the single digits this year. Good luck now with Lula getting exonerated. And now I think in Brazil, the Supreme Court may even decide that Sergio Moro was biased and throw out all these convictions due to the car wash scandal. So, you know, there's a lot more going on here. And in Russia, as you rightly point out, today's 25 bip rate hike, I mean, we've got sanction risk behind this. I mean, you know, we may see sanctions on Gazprom due to Nord Stream 2. So, you know, these are real risks. And Biden calling Putin a killer yesterday probably doesn't bode well in the eyes of emerging markets.
Probably didn't help in this currency market either. Damien, let's finish on this one. Did the Fed chair give them a helping hand this week?
Well, I think the Fed is clear in its message. After 20 years of outperformance, it is no longer going to support duration, and I think this market is going to pull on that thread until it snaps. So, you know, I would probably be staying away from emerging markets just in this environment.